Well, that's my $64,000 question.
Oh, good.
How did you learn, when you learned, because I've tried drawing human bodies, and there's actually a book Charlie recommended. I probably had about 10 of them to 12 of them done. But to do it from scratch, do you study anatomy? Or it was just practice over time? Or, I mean, getting perspective, knowing that in the arm, and how it blends into the wrists and the fingers, and,
Sure, sure. That's a good question. So well, your question about anatomy, I think I'll start there. And the short answer is yes. And then there's like a funny little story that goes along with that.
You did have formal training in anatomy,
Well, I did not have formal training in anatomy, and I studied it like on my own. I bought a lot of books and a lot of artist like anatomy books, and I would learn something from one book, I'd learn something from another book, and it was important for me to practice, like, to understand how the machine is made, how the human being is made. What are the differences, like, between, male and female in different age groups and different sizes and different proportions? What is a canon of proportions? What makes something beautiful? How can you be, like, more consistent, like, so that it's not an accident that something comes out well? One of my great professors, probably one of the most influential professors that I had regarding like striving for excellence, was a guy named Stephen Essel. And he said many things, but he said you should be able to draw the figure. He was also insistent about drawing from life. This is a really major point. And he said you should be able to draw the figure from any point. You could start with the toe and work itself out, and it'll come out. Start with the eye, start with the hand, start anywhere. And it wasn't just theory. Like, I had gone to his studio, and that's actually what he did. And it wasn't like he was showing off or it was practice or anything like that. Like, he would have somebody laid out in one of his paintings, like on a table, and there was, like somebody performing CPR. And because the person was laid out and he had painted that first, the hands were part of that part. But the rest of the figure that was attached to the hands that were on the chest had not been painted yet. So it was a deliberate thing. And I remember hearing from other professional artists when I was young, well, some days you have good days and some days you have bad days. And Stephen said, no, you don't have good days or bad days. You reach a kind of level because you're so proficient, and that he goes, you're always going to be bad. But really what he said is, you're always going to suck. You're just going to suck at a higher level. And so and basically what I came to understand with that is that you recognize troubles that you have in front of you, whether in front of you at the moment, whether they're anatomy or perspective or any of these things that you mentioned, drawing out of your head, or seeing a pose and remembering it and thinking, like, you're driving by and thinking, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And there's so many things that I've seen like that. Like last winter, I was driving. I didn't have it as part of this display because I thought there was too much already. But I was driving home, and there was this young girl, probably like 12 or something, bundled up in, it was the winter and it was snowing, and I just happened to see the movement, and I turned around, and she had her tongue out, and she was capturing the snow as it was like falling on her tongue. Now that's just so lovely. But I was driving, but like I remembered it. So I got home and I drew it in, in this little sketch thing that I have here. And, it's whatever thing that is holding you back at the moment, you work on it. You know that you're not good at probably like 10 things, but of the one thing that's really tripping you up is like proportion, or it's anatomy, or it's perspective. And you go, well, okay. So when I first started, and like I was in my teens and I was, dating that lady who would become my first wife, she had a photographic memory. And it had always been like that. She had a super high IQ. We would take IQ tests, we would do brain puzzles, and she would just decimate me. And like clearly that's a genetic thing. She could record things in her mind, and then like play it back like video. And I would test her on that, and it was, I'm not making it up, it was like superpowers, and she would laugh because when we were in school together, she'd go out and she'd have coffee and she'd be real relaxed about things. She was on the dean's list, and I would be back in our little apartment and with like 10 anatomy books and sketchbooks everywhere. Like, okay, did I remember it now? How does the arm work? How do those muscles work? Where's the radiobrachialis? And how does the bicep attach? And where is it attaching? And what is that muscle? And how could I see it differently from a different angle? And she would come in and she would literally just take my sketchbook and flip through it, like you're just browsing a book. And she'd say, oh, it's so great. You do all the work and I get better every week. And I loved doing it, right? And it wasn't frustrating to me. It's just that somehow I recognized that it would take me 10 times. I would have to look at the anatomy and say, okay, this brain requires that I draw that muscle part. I have to break it down. I can't memorize the whole thing. To break it down just to between the shoulder and the forearm. And I'm going to have to draw that part 10 times before I could recall it from memory, before I could draw it out of my mind and spin it around. And I have the front, the side, and the back. Got it. Now the forearm. And I would do that 10 times. Now let's put it together. And until I could do it from memory and move it in space any way I wanted it, I did not consider that I had actually learned. And then I would move on to the next, the eye, the skull, and I would buy the skull. And, a different person would be so demoralized by having a partner that was not a little, but vastly more intelligent. It wasn't even remotely close. She was on the dean's list. She could remember like lectures. She could remember, we'd walk into a room, walk through a building. She could remember the whole layout. It was just, that's the way her brain worked. But as a side note, when we got into the real world, because I had to work so hard for the little millimeters that I gained every day, it was fine for me to, kind of grind and work and scratch to get ahead. And where she was always recognized in a school situation, we all know once you get out into the world, nobody cares, and there, she did book covers as well in the beginning, and it was really unpleasant for her. It was hard work, and she didn't like the people, and it was much more difficult for her. So I guess the point of my story is, if you want to get better at something, it's a blessing if you have to work for it. you know what you want to work. You know what's giving you trouble. There's not a magic answer. Yes, some people can do it really easily. They really can. You know, I've seen it. When I went into, like, I got to painting from life, you know, and I showed you some of my life paintings here. When I first went into Steve's class, Steve Assel, he had been teaching with another guy named Max Ginsberg and a third guy named Erwin Greenberg. They had brought students, they had initially been teaching in a high school in New York that was called the High School of Art and Design. I think that's what it was. And, you know, it was my good fortune that when I walked into the class, all of those students that had come from like 6th grade with those teachers had come all the way through and been in and come into college. So I walked into a room with probably 40 people that had maybe 7 years worth of painting experience. And I was, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was terrible. I didn't know anything about color. I didn't know anything about composition. I didn't know anything about anything. I could sort of copy a photograph, sort of, kind of, badly, but well enough to like make my first illustration happen. But yes.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Our 2 hours is almost up.
Okay, so I'll finish this story and then we'll tie it up. Thank you.
Yep.
A lot of people went into that class and they were demoralized because everybody was so good. I was wild with enthusiasm that everyone was better than me. I was the worst one there. And so that I got to learn, I got to see and be inspired. That's the point of it really is, don't be demoralized by what's holding you back. You know what's holding, you know what you need to work on. If you want to improve on it, do it. If there are any other questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, maybe that's
Put the lights back on, we can see some of the stuff from the community.
Ah, okay. Thank you very much.